back to another video. In my last video I took a look at this on-guard bicycle lock with a inner groove mechanism, and in this video I'm going to take a look at another bicycle lock which also has an inner groove mechanism, but it's slightly different. This is a Rolson, they call it the shackle lock, and it's definitely intended for use on bicycles, as you can see. There's not very much information with this lock, although they do say that it's got a steel body. I'm not too sure about that, but anyway, we get 2 keys and the lock is fully operational, and it is essentially just a giant padlock. It's unlike anything else I've ever seen before. We get a mounting bracket, which, to be quite honest, is very, very badly made and doesn't really fit very well. So far, not so good. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're going to look at the inner groove mechanism in this lock. So if you remember, and I highly recommend, if you haven't watched my last video, that you do so before watching this one, because it will make a little bit more sense, unless of course you are familiar with the inner groove mechanism. So in the other lock in the lock I showed you in my last video, you can see there are pins in there which you manipulate to open the lock. Those pins basically are connected to the sliders, and those are what you pick to open the lock. And in this lock, rather than having pins, we've got actually large blobs of metal, basically. And if I take a pick, you can see that they definitely are sliders, and I believe they probably also have a sidebar system like in the other lock, and I'm finding it very difficult to manipulate these, but you can definitely shove them over. So they are actually sliders, just they're in a form that I have never seen before. If you look at the keys and compare the keys, here's the keys from the last lock. As you can see, they've got a laser cut groove in them right here, but with these ones they've just got it almost looks like we've got like side pins or something. It's a rather unusual shape of key. So, how do we go about picking this lock? Well, pretty simple really. All we have to do is clamp up the lock, or we don't have to do that, but that's optional. Use a tension wrench and manipulate these little sliders in here. Now I've found that it's actually quite difficult to do that because there's this gap above the sliders, and you'll find that when you try raking it, for example, the pick has a tendency to jump upwards rather than manipulating the sliders themselves. So just let me get set up for picking, and I'll come back. Okay, so we're set up for picking, and I'm just going to put my tension wrench in. You can't really see much right now, but the core in this lock is actually pretty floppy. So I'm going to use a half snowman, because these sliders are a little bit like wafers, to be honest. They're square rather than rounded, so it's quite hard to use a hook to pick them. So all I'm going to do is apply light tension. I found that this is best, and just manipulate. Oh, and it's already open. Okay. As you can see, it's open. I'll try that again, because that didn't take very long. But essentially all we're doing is raking these little sliders down here, and again, as you can see there, I'm not actually picking anything right now because the pick keeps wanting to jump upwards in that little gap there. So you have to be really, really careful. So let's try this again. Just light raking, and again really light tension is key, and just like so, again we're open. Now this lock has a pretty horrible feeling to it, I must admit. This portion of the lock, it looks like it might be quite heavy, but it's it's pretty light, and if this was my lock and I didn't have to pass it on, I would take this plastic cover off and see what's underneath. As you can see, if we look down these holes, it looks like pretty poor quality metal in there, and it looks really thin as well. So I wouldn't really recommend using this lock to secure anything of value. Maybe as a secondary security measure, they show it being used to lock the wheel of a bike up, and for that it might be okay, but like I said, I wouldn't recommend relying on it fully to secure a bicycle. The shackle itself feels pretty heavy, but again, I don't know without actually destructively trying to cut it if it will provide much resistance or not. Anyway, I want to thank Boris very much for lending me this lock, as with the other 3 locks that he lent me, and this is the last of the 3, so thank you the last of the 4, sorry. So thank you very much, Boris, again, for lending me all these locks, and I want to remind anybody else, if anybody has a lock that you think I might be interested in and wouldn't mind lending it to me, I will be more than happy to accept any offers, and email me. My email address is down below. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in my next video.